Welcome to the Paranormal UK Radio, the flagship show on the Paranormal UK Radio network. And with me tonight as my co-host, seeing as Mark is away on a course with his work, I've got Andrew Chaplin from the Paranormal Peep Show that broadcasts on the Paranormal UK Radio network.
Greetings, Irene.
All
Have
right.
been, Irene?
How have I been?
Been.
How have you been, Andy? We haven't spoken, or Monkey, should I say Monkey? I like to call you Monkey. We haven't spoken for a long time because you've been hiding from me, haven't you?
I have, yeah. I mean, the constant threats that I get on Facebook, the taking down of all my pages, the calling me in the middle of the night, and the vile insults that I have to get from you is just put me into hiding.
Well, I am your boss.
You are.
Yeah, I am.
She's a harsh mistress, people.
Oh, I know. Yeah. So anyway. It's snowing.
Yeah.
Do you know that the whole of the UK is going to be covered in snow by the morning? Or so somebody told me. But I bet you anything you like, there's none on my front doorstep.
It's a very, very, very early Christmas.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? And we've got Lynne laughing in the background here, people. Wonder what's going on there. Anyways, but the point is, now I forgot what I was going to say. Oh, yeah. Storm Emma is heading this way as well as this rush.
Why do they give them names?
Oh, I don't know.
When did this first happen? I mean, you know, am I going to call a puddle Keith? Is there kind of like a slight mist called Susan? You know, at what point do we draw the line? When does it become a name? When does a storm front become a name?
Oh, I got no idea. But this one was named by the Yugoslavian weather, whatever, over in Yugoslavia.
Doesn't sound a very Yugoslavian name, Emma, really.
No, I know, but, you know.
Should be Olga.
Yeah, well, anyway, this storm, Emma, I think it's Emma, is coming over. It's going to hit us this week, along with this cold front from Russia. We got the Russian cold.
I think Mr. Putin has created this for Britain. There has been so many accusations about the email hacking and the Brexit and the Trump administration from Russia. So we are going to give you a cold front now. You can deal with that.
Yes, we'll all have a very, very cold front over here.
I've always got a cold front, Irene.
Yeah, so have I. I wear thermals. In the winter, I put my thermals on. That keeps everything nice and warm. Do you wear thermals?
In summer, you're still cold because you're just a cold, soulless person, Irene. We do love you, really.
Yeah, I love being a bitch.
And yes, I have got thermals. I often go for a walk, actually, in the snow. It's quite nice to kind of meditate.
Anyway, let's get on to the show right now. You have completely thrown me today, and I knew this would happen, having you on as a co-host.
But can we talk a little bit about your experience? Because that was quite an interesting one.
I have many experiences, Monkey.
You're one to the experience that you had of picking up the very strange old man in a country lane in the middle of nowhere, and then kind of driving to the airport and dropping him off, and then he immediately disappears.
You must be the only person that didn't know about that, because that was all spoken about on the radio last week.
Oh, I just go by your Facebook page.
Yeah. For anybody that hasn't heard the story, I had to get to a funeral in Scotland on this particular day. And My car got lost in the country lanes at the back of Bristol somewhere, and we could not find Bristol Airport. And we were, 3/4 of an hour from when they closed the gate at the airport and you get on the plane. And I was beginning to panic. And all of a sudden, we're driving along these country roads. Absolutely nobody. It was so early in the hours of the morning. There was nobody about. Everybody was in bed asleep. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, came this little old man. So we decided to stop and ask him the way to Bristol Airport. And he said he couldn't tell us the way, but he could show us the way. It would be a lot easier if he showed us. And with that, he climbed in the back of the car. And he took us to Bristol Airport, where when we arrived there, he got out of the car. And he just disappeared, just like he appeared. Totally disappeared. But,
what did he actually look like? I mean, when he got in, presumably you thought he was real and he looked like...
I didn't feel he was real.
Oh,
this is it.
So as soon as you saw him, you thought he was a bit odd?
I just had a feeling that he was not a ghost, but he was some sort of other being, but he was not a human. I had this feeling all the time he was in the back of the car. In fact, it was so unnerving, I was a bit worried whether he'd was a bit, he'd try and kill us.
Reptilian.
Yeah. Anyway, so, but the point is, a couple of days later, when I was talking to my husband about it, and I don't know how it got round to it, but, I do know how it got round to it. I said, if he was a walker, what the hell was an old man in his late 70s doing out walking 4:00 in the morning? And why wasn't he wearing a hat on a cold February night? Why did he not have a hat on something high visibility, like a high visibility jacket or a band around him so that car headlights can reflect off of him? Why was he just dressed in a grey thick jacket? And then my husband told me, I said, he wasn't dressed in a grey thick jacket. He was dressed in a black one with stripes. I said, no, he wasn't. I said, he had a silver grey one on. I said, and it was a thick jacket. He said, what else did you see? I said, he had a thick mop of hair. He said, yeah, he said he did have a thick mop of hair, but it was well groomed. I said, no, it wasn't. It was like he'd been dragged through a bush backwards. His hair was sticking up all over the place. I said, and then my husband said he wore glasses. I said he didn't wear glasses. We both saw something totally different from one another. This man sitting in the back of the car, Brian's seeing him one way and I'm seeing him another way. It's totally different.
That's completely bizarre.
I know. I am thankful to him. A lot of people have suggested that maybe my cousin, whose funeral I was going to, sent him to me to make sure that I get there.
So it's almost like he's some kind of like guardian angel, but a shape-shifting one that appears differently to different people. But yeah. You've got to wonder why. Why would you want to appear differently to different people? What's the thinking behind it?
I got no idea. I honestly got no idea. Like the same way as I've got no idea where he disappeared to. Both Brian and I do agree that he got out of that car. We said thank you to him as he got out of the car. And then he just vanished into thin air. We never saw which way he went, where he went, or anything. And it was the same when we picked him up. He just was there. You know, you're driving along a country road, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, is a man.
Because you would have completely missed the funeral had he not shown you the way.
Oh no, I would never have made that plane. Would never have made that plane. No.
Very odd.
Yeah. Anyway, that's my story.
Who we got, Irene? Who we got?
Who we got? We've got from Spirit Radio. She's a host of Spirit Radio along with Willie Hassel, and her name is Lynne Nickerson. And she's written a book, Gateway to the Paranormal. Hello, Lynne.
Hi, Irene and Charlie. Andy, I'm sorry.
Charlie's
Charlie's as good as Monkey, isn't it?
Yeah, I prefer Monkey, but, Charlie.
Forgive me.
Lynn, just call him Monkey.
Monkey.
It's a lot easier.
Monkey. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me on. Let me say that. This is a pleasure.
I'm sorry we took so long to get round to you.
No. Well, I wanted to join in on that conversation because, as I had mentioned before to you, I had a similar experience. So what I wanted to ask you, Andy was saying, why do guardian angels appear differently? And I think you would have been probably apoplectic if something with a long gown and wings showed up on the side of the road, right?
Oh, crumbs, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
We would have just driven like bats out of hell.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think you would have found it more frightening than anything. But did he have contemporary clothes on, Irene?
Contemporary? He had modern day clothes, yeah.
Just modern day.
Modern day clothes.
Wow. But you get the sense that something is off.
Oh, yeah, all the time I felt there was something off. Brian, not so much, because he was more concentrating on directions. Because as the old man was sitting in the back seat, he was saying to Brian, right, take a left here, take this road there, move down that road there, we're going through this village here, and so he was more concentrating on that side of it.
Yeah.
But and I kept turning around, and I did say to him at one point during the journey, what are you doing out this time in the morning? And he said, I like to walk about 15 miles every day.
That's just so odd.
Yeah. An old man.
And he was in the car for how long? How long did it take you from that point to
I don't know. It
the
took
airport?
I should imagine. It felt like 3/4 of an hour.
And you've got to wonder, like, the logic behind it. Like, let's say he was out on a walk and he was a human and he was just walking. Why would you go to the airport to help somebody and then not worry about getting back?
Not worry about getting back. Right?
Yeah.
It's totally illogical. I agree with you.
Yeah,
I would go to Heathrow Airport, for instance, which, funnily enough, is about 45 minutes away. I wouldn't go to Heathrow Airport or let someone drive me to Heathrow Airport and then just let them drop me off
back
to find my way back.
And what is it? The subway system does not go out to the moors or wherever it was that you picked him up at, right?
No, I doubt there was even a bus service out there. It was right out in the sticks, yeah. Right out in the sticks. But the point is, like you say, why would he come all the way to the airport? That was quite a few miles we drove, just to be left there early hours of the morning before the buses even started. There was no train station that I could see there.
Yeah.
Right at the airport. So even if there was a bus went from the airport, he wouldn't be able to get. He wouldn't be able to get on it before 9:30 and use his old age pensioner's pass.
It's totally strange.
Yeah.
You never got a chance to ask him his name, did you?
No.
Somehow it probably seemed irrelevant, right?
I didn't even think about it. Really, Lynn, I didn't think about it. And another thing, my husband said he was carrying a small torch. He had a rucksack on his back. I didn't see him with a rucksack on his back, and he never had a torch.
That's so odd.
Mm. Yeah.
Well,
it's odd. It's going to be one of those mysteries that's going to stay with me for the rest of my life.
Well, who knows? He could have been an extraterrestrial. You just never know. I met this really odd person that appeared very humanoid-like when I was out in Arizona. I was working at a grocery store, and he came through my line. He looked like he was Swiss or French. He was sort of a small-framed man, but very contemporary, wearing just natural clothes, and he did have a backpack, whatever you call it, a backpack anyway, on his back. He'd probably been hiking. And he looked at me, and then he kind of jumped back, and he says something like, "Oh, you're full of light." And I thought, oh, no, not another New Ager, because that's what Sedona is all about, is New Age, this and that, and UFOs. So I said, oh, yeah, well, whatever. So I'm scanning his items, and he starts telling me, you're not going to be here very long. This isn't going to last much longer. And I'm thinking, I'm chastising myself because I'm thinking everything I'm thinking is reflected in my face. So we said our goodbyes, and I cashed out. It was at the end of the shift. So when I walked outside, it happened to be pouring outside of this grocery store, and there he was under the overhang. And so I asked him, what are you doing? Are you waiting for somebody? And he said, no, I'm just waiting for the rain to stop. So I said, well, how far are you going? And he said, just a couple of blocks. I said, okay, I'll give you a ride. I'm thinking, I've never done this before, because he seemed very, very kind, but he just knew too much. He was, he just had imbued this goodness. So we got into the car. It was still raining. So by then I felt like I wasn't talking to a real person. I really had a feeling that he was from somewhere else. So that's exactly what I said to him. I said, you're not from around here, are you? And he goes, very evasive. He goes, no, I'm visiting some friends, and I'm going to be leaving in a couple of days. And I said, but you're not from here, are you? And again, he gave me the same answer. So we got into conversation. I can't remember everything, but then I was thinking, gee, he's so nice. I wouldn't mind going out to coffee with him or something. And he turns around and he looks at me and he goes, I'm not looking to be a boyfriend. And I thought, oh my God, he's reading my mind. So I tried to scramble my thoughts. I just knew he was not from around here. So I drove him to the apartment he was visiting these people. And he got out and he kept giving me this strange look. And I didn't know if he thought I was going to stalk him or what the situation was. I don't know what he thought, but I have a feeling he felt that he broke his cover, that he probably said too much. But I really think that, he was extraterrestrial. He might have been Venusian, because they do appear to be very humanoid, but he was definitely imbued with goodness. And in Las Vegas, there are all kinds of reports of aliens walking amongst the crowds in the casinos, because they catch them on the security cameras.
Yeah.
Isn't that amazing? Yep. Preston Dennett has written about this. He's got several books out on UFOs over various states. He did one on Nevada. And what's that?
Lynne,
yeah?
Are you rustling paper?
Oh, no. I'm turning the chair. Maybe that's it.
You're getting too excited. Okay. Right. So these ones that come over on the security camera.
What's that again?
Do they? These aliens, they're picking up on the security cameras. Do they actually look human? Do you know?
No, they don't. They look very odd. There have been some, too, that were caught by their eyes. There was this one story in Preston Dennett's book where he was watching these people, kind of oddly dressed, going up a flight of stairs. And the last one was a man, and he had like a cane. He was very small, very, very pale. And like when he went up one step at a time, his joints didn't work right. And the man was thinking to himself, my God, what a freak. And that man turned around and stared him down and then continued walking up the stairs. So that was one report alone, but no, they don't always look humanoid. And the people that were sitting at like the blackjack table, they didn't know anybody was there, and the security guards could tell because they weren't interacting with these people, but they were right there between these other people. It was very odd to read it. Visible and invisible.
You've also got reports of Men in Black, and they've also been on CCTV. I don't know if you're aware of that footage or seen that footage.
Where again, Andy?
The Men in Black, they were recorded going into a hotel, and they just looked completely, stereotypical. They both dressed the same. They had the black glasses, the black hat, the black coat, and everyone was looking at them strangely. There was, one of the hotel porters did a double take. There was a boy that was kind of transfixed.
Wasn't that on YouTube or something where you actually see them coming through the doors?
Yeah, it was double sliding doors, almost like an airlock. So they got double sets of double doors, and they just walked in and they just looked massively odd and completely out of place at a hotel.
Ooh. I've read a couple of books on the MIBs, and the consensus is that they are either hybrids or they're aliens disguised as humans. They're just so odd.
Yeah, they
appear odd. Yeah.
But I've got to tell you a story that happened to me over 30 years ago. Actually, it was in never mind, I forgot.
Was it 1909?
No, it was about 36, 37 years ago. We were in Corfu. My son was 2 years old. 2 years old. So, yeah. He was 2 years old at the time. And I was out there with my brother-in-law and my sister, my mother, and my husband. And we were driving in Jeeps up this mountain. Okay? And as we were going round and round this mountain going up, people were coming out of these houses and villages and shouting and waving at us. And we thought they were just being friendly, really friendly people. Saying, hey, I'm waving back and everything. Anyway, we get further and further up the mountain. And before we knew where we were in cloud cover. We were up in the clouds.
Wow.
Couldn't see a thing in front of us. And suddenly, out of the clouds, walking up the mountainside, and appears out of these clouds was a little man in Lederhosen. Now, I'm in Greece, in Corfu, and this man is wearing Lederhosen. You know, do you understand what I mean?
Little shorts out of suede.
Yeah, where they smack each other's bums when they dance, yeah. Well,
Irene's well into that. She loves all that.
Well, anyway, there he was, right? And he just looked at us. We'd stopped the Jeeps. He looked at us. He put his hand up, a finger up at us, and he went, "No, no, 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 no." And he walked off again into the clouds. So my husband got out the Jeep and he walked over to where the little old man was, and he came back. His face was white. He said, "We've got to turn these Jeeps around." I said, "But why?" You know, he said, "Well, if we go any further, we're going to go right off the side of the mountain."
Oh.
We would have been killed.
Oh, my goodness.
So all these nice people and everything shouting at us on the way up was trying to tell us that it was a dead-end road and it didn't go any further. You know, we'd go up so far and that would be the end.
So once again, you were kind of like saved by an etheric being.
That's right.
But
yeah,
did you...
Leydenhausen this time. And he even had the little hat with the feather in it.
Did your husband see the same thing, or was it again a different description?
No, we all saw that he was wearing Leydenhausen because we were all yodeling at him as he walked away.
It's a bit weird. I mean, why in Greece? You'd expect somebody in a Greek outfit.
The island of Corfu.
Yeah, it's the most bizarre thing.
Yeah,
very incongruous.
But he's going, "No, no, 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 no," and he's rattling, he's wagging his finger at us, and we're going, "Yodel, lady." All yodeling at him. Yeah. But if we'd gone any further, if he hadn't appeared, and if he hadn't have said that, and we'd just started the engines up and carried on, we would have all gone off the cliff, off the side of the mountain. So,
that's amazing.
Yeah, I know.
So was he a midget? Did you say he was like a midget?
No, he was a small man. But
he was just a small man? Okay.
He looked like Bavarian or Swiss, you know?
I mean, that sounds like a Sun headline, doesn't it? British tourist saved by Lederhosen midget in Corfu.
But I had one other as well when I was a schoolgirl. Yeah. Okay, now this is a bit naughty, people.
Oh, okay.
I was a schoolgirl, and like other schoolgirls from my school, we used to skive off regular. And skive off, skip school regular.
Oh, okay.
And we used to go up the South Downs.
I think the Americans would say play hooky.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And we used to go up the South Downs. Well, anyway, on the route that we used to take across the South Downs was a rough old track on the side of the downs. So it was like you were walking. It was like a track cut out on the hillside, you know, on the side of the hill. Mm-hmm. And it was all old stones and really rough old track. And me and my friend were walking along there one day when this bloke jumped out in front of us with only a T-shirt on and nothing else.
Oh.
Yes. So everything was dangling to the wind. Anyway, we turned around and started running away back the way we come. And as we were going along this track, up on the downs, remember we're up on the hills, right? A little old lady, she must have been about 90 years old, if a day. She had a walking stick and she was trotting along this rough old track. Now, how she done it, I don't know. My friend ran straight past her. I ran up to her and I said, "Lady, don't go down there. There's a man down there with his bits hanging out, sort of thing." You know, I'll just put it mildly. And she just turned around and she looked at me and she said, "Dear, never ever be tempted." And she walked away in the direction of the man. Anyway, so I ran to catch up my friend. She said, "What you stopped for?" So I turned around and looked. The old lady was gone. And there was nowhere she could have gone to. Nowhere she could have gone to. And I said, I stopped to talk to the old lady. She said, "What old lady?"
Oh, no.
So that was the third one.
Oh, my.
There seems to be like a consistent theme of like they're all old.
Yes. Yeah, they are.
But if she were a warning, then you had already seen the partially clad man, right? So what was her purpose?
Don't ever be tempted, she said.
Don't ever be tempted.
I just remember those words, don't be tempted. But the point is, she was, now this one, thinking about it now, she was dressed, well, she was old, very old, so maybe she'd had the clothes a long time, but she was dressed not of the period of the 1960s. Let's face it, she was, even for an old person, you know, she looked more like out of the 1800s.
Oh.
So, but she had this stick, a rickety old stick with her. Like a walking stick she was using.
But then what do you suppose the message of her appearance was? Because she wasn't really warning you of anything, was she?
No, I don't know. I've got no idea. She just was there. She just appeared there. I've got no idea what she was trying to, you know.
Yeah.
The man in the Maladen house, and he was warning us. The one in the car was getting us to the airport. This one, maybe her words, which have stuck with me all my life, never be tempted. Maybe it's something to do with the words. I don't know.
You can't just have normal experiences, can you, Irene? You have to have the ones that are just completely surreal, the Salvador Dali of the paranormal world.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's really odd.
Strange.
So anyway, Lynne, tell us your background and how you got into what you got into.
Yeah.
Oh, well, ever since I was young, I think I had some odd ideas about things. At 6 years old, you know, something in the middle of the night held my face into the pillow. I mean, a lot of people have stories like that. And of course, I flipped around in bed and there was just nobody in the room. So that was just like the beginning of realizing that there's something else beyond what you can see that's out there. And then by the time I was 8 years old, I felt like I wasn't human, that I came from the southwestern sky somewhere. And then when I was 10, I had 2 instances where I saw UFOs. And it happened to be in 1961 when just before, both of those instances happened in August, and then Betty and Barney Hill had their episode in September of 1961. And some of the things correlated. So it's just been, it snowballed from there. You know, having strange dreams, and I don't usually see ghosts, but a lot of different things happen. A lot of dreams, though, warnings and precognition. Irene gets to be awake when she has these. I'm asleep when I get mine.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I'd rather be asleep, actually. Do you still feel that you don't belong, Lynne?
Well, what I think it is I truly believe that Earth is an experiment, that there have been several different species that have interacted with us. And I think just about everybody across the Earth has some kind of alien DNA. And some probably have more than 50% than others. And, you know, there's the Rh negative factor that I think we have to consider, because that of course stands for the rhesus monkey factor, the primate factor. And what is it about? It's a very small portion of the Earth's population has the Rh negative factor. And I think that's got something to do with the hybridization that's gone on. So I think everybody might be, you know, part alien. It's just maybe I've got more than my share.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. That's what people say, I'm alien. Monkey definitely is alien.
Irene, you're reptilian.
Well, yeah, you want to see my eyes change. Especially after a Prosecco. After a Prosecco, definitely changes my eyes.
Well, don't forget, we've got the remnant of a tailbone that's considered reptilian. Yeah. And then there's also the
appendix. The appendix doesn't do a thing for anybody, does it?
That's right. The appendix is the other thing. They haven't quite figured out what the appendix is supposed to be, although now there's been study done, or rather, I guess the information has come down from those who are supposed to know, and that it used to be an organ to help purify the blood.
Yeah.
Yes, but it was genetically taken out because they didn't want our life longevity to be so long. They wanted us to be shorter term.
So they took the organ away and left this little bit there.
That's right. So we have a remnant of a blood purifying organ for longer life.
So the next question is, who are they? Who are them?
I guess whoever is smarter than we are. But I think we've been interacted by many different species. It could have been reptilian. It could have been, you know, somebody else who might have been wanting to improve on the species, but also wanted to be in complete control of their product.
Yeah, I'm a bit like that.
Lynne, can you go in depth into your UFO experiences? Like, what were the circumstances and what did you actually see?
Okay, some of them were the two when I was 10 years old. I felt for a long, long time that they were dreams. The first one was I woke up and looked out the window and saw a squadron of red UFOs. And it was like a snapshot in time. I saw no movement. I just remember waking up, looking out the window as a 10-year-old, seeing that, and then waking up in the morning and recalling the dream. And the second one must have been in the same month. And this is really peculiar because it took me about 40 years to get it verified. Again, I thought it was a dream. But the second instance was waking up paralyzed and looking in my doorway and seeing suspended in the doorway a green phosphorescent man. And he looked like he was in a spacesuit, like an inflated spacesuit. And in my short-sightedness as a child, the only association I could make was with the Michelin Tire Man icon. You guys are Michelin Tires? Have you heard of Michelin Tires?
I'm sorry, yeah, I was muted. Yes, we have.
Okay. Well, it looks like a little man made up of rolls of tires. Well, this guy looked like the Michelin Tire Man. So again, I tried to scream, but I couldn't. I was paralyzed. So in my research, subsequent to that, and it took about 40 years, I found 5 other instances where people have seen the Michelin Man. They all describe him as a Michelin Man. And the accounts vary a little bit. And they were mostly from the 70s and some from the 80s. And it almost seems to me like whatever species this was, they've sort of gone beyond in technology so that they don't appear as an inflated spacesuit. But there's a picture of one. I found a picture in a book by what's called Earth and Alien Enterprise by Timothy Good.
Oh, yeah, Timothy, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And he's got a picture in there. I guess it's the second picture in the plates in the middle of the book. It was shot in Italy.
Yeah.
And it looks exactly like what I saw as a 10-year-old. That's kind of amazing that I got it verified.
And all these stories are in your book, Gateways to the Paranormal, yes?
Yep, they are.
Giving you a plug there, Lynne. Just giving you a plug.
For the longest time, I thought it was just dreams. In fact, I'm doing a presentation about the quality of dreams because I think there are so many different dimensions of reality in dreams. I don't think it's just one. So I'm coming to realize that dream was actually, another aspect of reality.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think the Michelin Man kind of like meant to you, or why did they present themselves as the Michelin Man? Did you ever get to the bottom of that?
Well, because I think that's actually the way they look, since other people had seen the same thing in real time.
That's interesting. So it's not a case of kind of like delving into your psyche and picking out something random that you recognise.
No, somebody else with a psychiatrist background asked me the very same question, and I said it looks like the Michelin Man because it looked just like the Michelin Man. There was nothing deep and dark about it. But there was a woman in Colorado who saw the same thing. A couple of people on Reunion Island near Madagascar off the coast of Africa. There were 2 sightings there. And the one in Italy.
Yeah.
And they all made the connection to Michelin Man. It's the way this being looked. It was the look of the spacesuit because it looked inflated.
Wow.
So, again, it's a case of dreams aren't always dreams. Dreams are just different aspects of reality.
Yeah. So it makes you wonder that if he was wearing a spacesuit, presumably he couldn't cope with the environment of Earth. Maybe.
That's right. I didn't see an antenna on the back of mine. Again, I was 10 years old. But in the picture, it looks like this little space creature does have a little backpack and a little antenna coming out of the backpack.
Okay.
I wish everybody could see that photo because it's in Timothy Good's book in the middle of it. If you think of it, Earth and Alien Enterprise. So it validates so many people, and it validates my dream that I had about 40 years ago or more.
Yeah. It's nice to have it validated, isn't it?
It is, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, because a lot of people think maybe they're crazy, or what did I really see, or did I dream it? Well, maybe you did dream it, but it doesn't mean it's any less real.
Yeah.
Have you guys?
Remind us the time period, Lynne, when this happened.
1961.
61.
When I had my dream, yeah.
That's interesting. So have you had anything kind of like more recently at all?
I have. When I was out in Arizona, I had actually 3 episodes. One was witnessed by a parking lot full of people. I was working at a hotel, and many of the guests went out in the parking lot and watched this thing. And it just looked like suspended globes of light. And they looked stationary, and then one of them would move horizontally and back to place, or vertically and then back to place. And it stayed suspended for about 10 minutes. And then I had to get back to work. And I don't know exactly when it disappeared, but there had to have been 30 people in the parking lot watching this thing. Oh, in the prelude to this, Andy, I must mention this. I was checking in a woman, and she happened to be the sister of the owner of the hotel. And she was very nice, but all of a sudden, while I'm checking her in, she starts babbling about, they're coming tonight. And I said, who? She says, well, the space aliens, the UFOs, they're coming tonight. And I said, well, how do you know? And she said, well, they told me. She says, I talked directly to them. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this woman is really off her rocker. To be that open with a complete stranger, I thought was just very odd. So I just smiled nicely. And I checked her in, and knowing that she was, the hotel manager's, hotel owner's sister, I just didn't say anything. At 10 o'clock, the hotel manager comes by the front desk, and he says to me, lock your door, lock your drawer, come outside with me. And I thought for sure I had done something. I said, well, I'm the only one here right now. He says, that's okay, lock everything up, come with me. So we go out in the parking lot, and there was already 30 people out there. And sure enough, and she walks over to me and she says, see, didn't I tell you they were coming tonight? Unbelievable.
How did she know?
Evidently, she wasn't lying. Evidently, they're in contact with her.
Oh.
Sedona's a very strange place, Irene.
Yeah, I say. Yeah.
Well, there's a Sedona in, is it Mars? I think it is a region of Mars, or it might be the moon.
It's not that one though, Andy.
What's
no, I know, but I mean, there seems to be, alien, either Mars or the moon, with the name only. But you got to wonder, what was the thinking behind that? Is there a strange link that we're not being told about?
You mean the face on Mars?
I'm going to Google it as we're talking.
He's Googling.
I'm going to find out where it is.
If he's talking about Sedona and the face on Mars and so forth, yeah, this is Sedona. They're very close.
Yeah.
And they're both very extraterrestrial-like.
Yeah. Okay, so they're not exactly spelt the same, but they're kind of similar.
Yeah, very similar.
Sedona's a very, very mysterious place, full of vortexes and portals, and people they go there, they say that they have these amazing experiences, Monkey.
It's true. It's I think a question of the land being haunted and the rock. It's got so much iron in it that it's quite a conductor.
Yeah.
So there are supposed to be portals all over Sedona.
Yeah, that's right.
And evidently I lived in one too.
Did you?
Yeah, I did. Only because I saw a mothership while I was out there too. That was another one of the experiences.
Yeah.
So I woke up from a dream, and there was this gargantuan craft above me that stretched out for miles. It was that big. It was up about 1,000 feet, so it had to have been two miles in one direction, because I knew where the ridge was that it was expanded over, as well as in another direction, which is a mile away. So this thing might have been 1 by 2 miles. It was huge.
So you were living within the vicinity of this thing, inside this area.
Yep, the portal is supposed to be about 10 square miles, and I don't know if it opens and closes, but many people have reported sightings in this area, and I didn't know it until long after the dream was over. And I read some books by Tom Dongo. He's got 7 books out because he researches strange phenomena in Sedona. So he states specifically part of the parameters. Some of the parameters were Verde Valley School Road and Highway 89A, and Highway 179, and I lived right there.
You did?
And Yes, and it was a mile from Bell Rock. And the rumors about Bell Rock were that UFOs would not only land on Bell Rock, they would go inside it. And I thought, oh, that's so absurd. And for a year and a half, I watched that rock, and I never saw anything in the sky. And I thought, the darn New Agers, they don't know what they're talking about. It's all hype. Until I had my experience.
When you were in Arizona, what were the skies like when you were young?
What was the skies?
Sorry, I can't help the fact that you're from Arizona. It brings the lyrics of The Orb into my mind. I do apologise.
So what was the question, Andy?
What were the skies like when you were young? It's actually a song by The Orb.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
They went on forever, and when we lived in Arizona, we had little fluffy clouds. It's just quite a well-known song. I don't know if it must be in the States, but certainly in England, it was kind of, I grew up on songs like that, and I just couldn't help the fact that because you're from Arizona, I just thought I'd bring that in there.
Well, I'll tell you, there is it's like a rainbow out there in Arizona. The skies are absolutely beautiful. The sunsets are breathtaking. And the sky goes on forever.
What I want to ask, Lynn, is you lived within this portal area.
Yeah.
What did it feel like? Did you feel the energy? Did you have days where you were highly active compared with other days, or what?
There were days when I was highly active. Yes, I felt sensitive to a lot of stuff. I don't know. You always felt like you were on a high there because it was just so. Oh, the song, I see it. Because it was just so beautiful. It's warm, it's comfortable, the weather's fantastic, and it's beautiful. But as far as any kind of tingling sensation or whatever, no. But the way I interpreted it, the way I felt it, was through these very odd dreams. And that I thought was a dream. But again, I think it was just plain altered reality. I watched that darn thing lift up and take off. And it took off in a flash of light. And it was like cigar-shaped, but it was gargantuan. It was huge.
Yeah.
Have you had any abduction experiences that you can actually recollect?
I don't think so. I think they think I'm one of them, so they leave me alone. No, I can't say I've been abducted.
Interesting.
No, I don't think I've been abducted either.
But then sometimes you might not know because some people have been regressed.
It's true. You're
and then
right.
They kind of find out that actually their interactions were a little bit more than just seeing a UFO.
Yep. They find out usually after regression. How about you guys? Have either?
Well, Monkey is abducted quite often because they use him
but by whom?
Irene.
They use him as a subject of experiment, to figure out why this mentality. Monkey's got this mentality. It's a mystery, an absolute mystery. But you're talking about cigar-shaped.
Well, I have had some odd things in the past that might be UFO related. I mean,
okay.
Do tell. Irene, have you heard about this? I can't remember if I told you about all this stuff.
I'd love to hear it.
Okay, so things that I remember when I was younger, for instance, would be, first of all, slightly paranormal psychic type stuff. So I would hear like a very low kind of voice saying, "Hello, what's your name?" Which I believe is more spirit guide related. But in conjunction with that...
Are you sure, Andy? Where were you at the time?
It wasn't Jimmy Savile, luckily.
Right, okay.
But in conjunction with that, I used to have kind of recurring dreams of kind of like waking up outside. Now, we used to live in a house with a car park next to it. And I used to kind of like remember waking up, kind of like my face would be up looking at the stars, and there'd be like these troll-like beings kind of like surrounding me, almost like Jawas from Star Wars with kind of like brown hoods on them.
Wow. Yeah.
Although they didn't have the glowing eyes. But the thing is, I couldn't quite see their faces, but I knew they were kind of like troll-like, and I wasn't getting whether it was positive or negative. There wasn't that kind of feeling. But the weird thing is, usually in dreams, you don't get temperature and you don't get things like wind on your face.
That's right.
This particular kind of like dream, I'll call it, but experience is probably a better word. I would feel the wind and the coldness. And the other odd thing is, I remember kind of like going through my glass window, almost being floated through the glass window, still with my bed in my bed also.
Oh my gosh. Really?
Now, I used to put that down to just wild imagination or dream or just crazy stuff. And of course, that can't happen because it's impossible. But then I would hear about other people's kind of like experiences of also being floated through glass and floated through walls. And then I was thinking, and then I was looking at things like similarities with abductees and things going on in their lives and traits. One of the traits is increased psychic abilities, kind of empathy towards animals, which I've definitely got. And feeling, as you say, Lynn, like a complete alien on this planet. I felt like a complete alien. I didn't fit in at school, didn't really fit in with the people around me. I had a completely different viewpoint of most people and still do. It's almost like every single thing that goes on, I've got the opposite view, whether it's Trump or Brexit or gun control or whatever. I've got the opposite view of what the rest of the masses seem to kind of like agree with. So the other odd experience probably would have been about the sixth form period, and I had this very kind of lucid dream, and it was kind of like one of those half awake, half asleep type things.
Sure.
And I was almost like astrally looking from my kitchen through the back door, and I just saw these kind of what I call the baldy men. They were just tall men with completely bald heads, and this absolute feeling of just terror, and I didn't even know why I was terrified, but just complete terror. And I knew I hated them and I hated the experience, and I just kind of wanted to get out of there, and I kind of woke up out of it. So they looked kind of like human to me, but I knew they weren't human. I knew they were kind of like not of this world type of thing.
In disguise, yeah.
This is it. Almost like kind of like if you imagine like a human grey hybrid that's tall, that's got a completely bald head in kind of like dark suits, almost like there's a film, I think it's called Dark City. They kind of reminded me of that. Yeah. So
okay.
So yeah, those are my kind of experiences, and quite distinct experiences.
Andrew, you were talking about haunted mansions?
Yeah, I've been watching something quite interesting recently, Celebrity Haunted Mansion. Now, I don't usually watch these kind of things, but I just thought I'd do it just for a bit of fun, because there's so many different kind of ghost and paranormal programs out there, and it's kind of like interesting to find the different ones that are out there. Now, this particular one started off with 10 celebrities, and it was a bit like the kind of like the Big Brother.
Oh no! Is this that new one? Is this that new one that's just come out on the television?
Yeah, but the thing is, it started off like you'd imagine. It was a bit silly, it was a bit jokey, and it was a bit all over the place. But in actual fact, I kind of stuck with it just out of pure curiosity, and it did actually get better. Like as celebrities were being voted off, the ones that were more serious and taking it more seriously tended to be the ones that stayed, and the experiences they were getting were quite interesting. They had Jack Osborne, which is I think is quite nice chap. He comes across as quite grounded and quite level-headed. And they had a guy, I forgot his name. He's got like a little beard from Taps. I can't remember what his name is, but the Ghost Hunters.
Jason Haas.
Yeah,
Jason,
yeah. I think so. Yeah, and he was a pretty sound guy as well. So I was impressed with who they got on as the kind of like the team leaders, so to speak. Even though the concept was a bit cheese and everything, but the experiences they got were really interesting. And one of the bits of tech that they used that I found most interesting was they've got some kind of infrared camera thing that picks up on almost like limbs of people and kind of tracks them.
Oh, yeah. Mark's got one of them.
Yeah. So what it does, it looks for what this camera identifies as might be a limb, and then kind of like draws a stick figure.
That's
so you've got
right,
points,
yeah.
and then they're drawn together. Now, this thing was actually picking up on the normal human alive people, i.e. the celebs, but it was also picking up on strange anomalous stick figures in the background as well, including ones that seemed to kind of creep up walls and interact with them at the same time. So they would be kind of like standing there, and they would feel a cold patch, and as they were feeling the cold patch, this camera would be picking up the anomalies, and then they would kind of like move their hand into this where they think the being, whatever it is, the entity was, and then it would kind of like move away and it would crawl away. Very, very, very bizarre. Now, Lynne, I understand that you do investigations as well. So what kind of investigations do you do? Where have you been? And what kind of tech do you use?
Well, we didn't have anything like that. That certainly is very creepy.
It is very creepy.
Oh, my gosh. Most of the stuff that we've done has been kind of innocuous. We've managed to get evidence and get it corroborated, especially historically speaking. But there was one investigation that was kind of chilling. It was a public building in a city in New England. I can't be any more specific than that, but it was built out of brick, and it had large granite stone in the basement. So when Willie was telling me about this investigation, that he's got this neat place and this guy would like us to come and see what's going on, I started getting images that, this place has some negative history, and I think it was connected with the mob at some point. So we get there, and the upstairs was really pretty quiet. So we went down to the basement, and the basement was just full of really awful stuff. There were 2 rooms down there in particular. One was the furnace room, and the other one was a makeshift bathroom and locker room. So evidently, strictly for men. I don't know exactly what it was connected to. The building was built, I believe, at the end of the 19th century. So it wasn't all that old. But we did set up a recorder in the furnace room. I got a terrible, terrible negative feeling in there. What we picked up was one EVP. And it was a woman and a child. We heard what sounded like ripping duct tape. And we hear this tearing, ripping duct tape. And then we hear this woman, she's on the verge of sobbing. And she goes, "I didn't slit you there." And she says it in a New England accent. And then the response is from a little girl who says, "I know." And we're thinking, what the hell went on in that basement? I just got the feeling of something really untoward, And then the other area was that darn the locker room basement area. And without putting in any recorders or anything, I was just totally creeped out. It felt sexually perverted. So we never got anything definite on that, but what ensued was not real positive either. So there were three of us crammed into this little bathroom, and Willie was using the infrared camera, and he never got anything on the camera, but we got a lot on the recorder. So we started asking, like, the K2 meter kept going off, and it was flying way off on the very end of it. So we knew that we had a pretty energetic spirit there. So we tried to narrow down, are you male, are you female? When did you live here? Did you work here? So this guy worked there in the 50s. And we found out that maybe the building was owned by an insurance company, and not all of the business was legitimate. So we asked him what he did, and he said that, if they were all yes and no questions, so we asked if he was a hitman, and he said no. Then we went through, well, what is it? Is it just you hurt people? Well, he says, you're just an arm breaker. And he goes, yes. So I said, well, do you feel badly about what you've done to people? And no. Come to find out that it was connected with the mob, and I don't know the extent of the perversity that went on in that bathroom, but I think that people were probably tortured in there. So he might not have killed people, but he did some damage, some bodily damage. It was just an uncanny series of answers that we got from this guy. It was very frightening. I found it frightening.
Oh,
that's pretty,
so that
pretty
was,
dodgy.
It was very dark. The energy was dark.
So describe the kind of like the layout of this the building and the room that you were in.
Well, it was a bathroom, and I think it had 2 stalls, and it had some lockers in it. So that was down in the cellar. But it was just a typical brick building that was built for commercial purposes. And it had a basement, and it used to have a wood stove in the basement because we could see where it connected to the wall, and then the chimney went up through the wall. But it had been replaced by a furnace. So we gathered that this took place around the 50s, that the mob had the building in the 50s. So people were being pushed downstairs. There was a full-body apparition, which we didn't catch. Well, of course, we caught the orbs and so forth, but orbs aren't much evidence. But as far as the EVPs, I think that's pretty good evidence.
What's the oldest place that you've actually investigated, Lynn?
That would be in Hampton, New Hampshire's the James House Museum. It was built in 1723. And, of course, there are different sections to it where it's been modified. And the same family, meaning the same descendants of the same family, lived in that house for 226 years. So we've done many investigations in there, and we've gotten a myriad of information. But what we did at the beginning of this was to go in for a walkthrough like most intuitives and psychics do. And I picked up some names, and let me see, the names are Suzanne, Sarah, and Beatrice. Yeah. We got them all verified, although the last name was actually Bernice and not Beatrice, but I thought that was pretty darn close.
Not bad.
But I got a couple of visuals on who might be haunting. In fact, one of them wound up becoming a dream. He visited me in my dream, and it was very menacing. And the message was he wanted us out of the house. He didn't want us investigating there. So I wrote the dream down. I wrote down the description of the guy. We found a woman to interview that used to play in the house when she was younger. And she gave me the same description of the guy from my dream. Mm-hmm. And apparently she called him Mr. Grumpy Pants. So he was dressed in 17th century clothing. I'm sorry, it was 18th century because he was from the 1700s.
Lynne, sorry, can I interrupt for a moment?
Sure.
Are you moving around?
I'm trying to sit still, but yes, I just did. I'm sorry.
It's really coming across. It really is coming across.
Okay. Yeah. So anyway, he apparently was one of these individuals that gravitated to the house. He wasn't related to the family, but he had taken the house over, and he felt that it was his domain, and he didn't like these interlopers coming in and destroying the serenity of the house.
So he never actually lived in the house at any time. He was just like drifting through and decided that that's where he was going to stop.
He's one of them that we couldn't find any historical information on. Yeah. We suspected that maybe he stayed at the house as like a tenant.
Okay. Do you know who built the house?
It was the original owner. Benjamin James was the guy's name. So all of the James first-born sons lived there for 7 generations.
Wow. Yeah.
It's amazing. Nice. And we've gotten EVPs there. There was a Swiss woman that called out Willie's name. We've gotten coughing EVPs because there were 5 individuals that died of consumption.
Yeah.
And Willie and I also experienced smelling eucalyptus, which was used in the treatment of consumption in the 17 and 1800s. So that's a lot of good verification, confirmation, I should say, of the different things that we uncovered. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to ask if you've done many of these investigations.
We've done many there. We've done a few personal residences, which we pretty much didn't get a whole lot of information from, and a couple of museums. Again, not a whole lot. Willie, if you were here to speak, it'd probably tell you about being in the bathroom of an old brick building and the toilets kept flushing on him. Yeah, and there was nobody there.
Oh wow.
So
did you have any mediums with you on these investigations?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, we do have a good psychic medium. And she came and she verified much of the stuff that I picked up on. The attic is very active, and I felt that there were a lot of children up there. I also mentally picked up on a man who I felt was a hired hand. And come to find out, there was a hired hand there who stayed there most of his life. She got the same visual that I did. So we picked up on him, and that there were many children in the attic, and we get many orbs. We get the most orbs up there. They come and they go. You may get 60 in one frame, and they're gone in the next frame. I also picked up on a woman who was nursing the kids, taking care of the children, but one child was very sick. Again, several people died from consumption. So, yeah, the medium, she and I corroborated information, and much of it matches. She came up with some names, I came up with some other names, and we verified it through historical records.
Wow.
Can I ask, Lynne, does she try to move these spirits on?
No, I don't think they want that done.
No.
But she doesn't do that, and neither do I. I don't think they want it done.
Okay. Right, that's answered that one then.
Maybe they like the ghosts for, I don't know, publicity reasons.
No, I just wondered, whether you got any that were in distress or something that she could help to move on.
No, in fact, the lady who coughed, we think her name is Martha Ann James. And she was one who died from consumption, but she feels that the house is still hers, and she's very much at home there.
Yeah.
She doesn't want to move on.
I see. And all these stories, are they in your book, Lynn?
Yeah, as a matter of fact. Well, especially Mr. Grumpy Pants and Frank James, because Mr. Grumpy Pants is a story in himself.
Okay, so they're all in the book. Gateway to the Paranormal, people. I do like to give the plugs.
Yeah, I do appreciate that.
That's okay.
How many investigations have you done in total, would you say, Lynn?
Oh, I don't know. Maybe upwards of between 15 and 20. Sometimes we have to go back, but we always document them, and then I write up notes.
And do you kind of like differentiate between kind of human souls and human spirits, and perhaps kind of either elemental or demonic or kind of otherworldly creatures?
Well, it's interesting that you mention that. For the most part, everything really feels pretty neutral. But I also think that there's every once in a while something negative gravitates and comes in, because we have gotten photos. Actually, 3 separate parties have gotten photos where the room will be filled with black fog. And then the next photo, there'll be nothing there. And sometimes it appears that the fog is moving in one direction or another, and then it completely dissipates in the next shot. So there's something that does hang out there that isn't always nice, but no one has complained about being hurt or scratched or whatnot.
And what would you say would be the ratio of kind of like good, well-meaning spirits or kind of neutral spirits versus kind of like the more negative, get out kind of spirits?
Oh,
the usual
probably
ones. Get out.
1/20th maybe. I mean, I think there's only, it's happened rarely that we've caught the fogs, the black fogs. It has happened 3 times over the course of, I think we've been there investigating 4 years now.
All right. So you're saying like the majority of encounters you have are more positive or neutral?
Oh, yes, definitely.
So that's an interesting one. Sorry, because when you get kind of like classic shows like either Most Haunted or Ghost Hunters or kind of some of the American shows, they do kind of like tend to dwell on the negative or at least kind of.
That's what sells the show, Andy, isn't it?
Yeah.
Nobody's gonna tune into a show where you got good old granny sitting in the corner doing her knitting. They want things that are going to be screaming and scratching and attacking you.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I'd find that interesting. I think it's the power of love, how love.
Yeah, I would too, but it just doesn't sell the shows. This is why they do it.
There could be 2 things going on. It could be a case that either kind of like you're going into investigations where things are predominantly positive, or could it be that some of these shows are specifically looking for the negative, and so they get the negative, whereas if they went in looking for positive, they might get positive?
Well, it depends how many stones they're willing to throw, doesn't it?
It does. Attitude has an awful lot to do with it. If you're going in looking for something negative, you might be provocative. You might try to provoke spirits and get a negative response. I do think attitude has a lot to do with it.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be treating them disrespectfully anyway, the ghosts or the spirits, you know?
No, you shouldn't. You shouldn't. You know, even the best-hearted spirit, I should imagine, get right pissed off if somebody last time treated it with disrespect. I know mine would. Mine definitely would.
How about you, Andy? Do you have any experience with ghosts?
Yeah, I mean, I have seen some, and I've also been involved in investigations as well. I've certainly had things kind of like knocking noises when there've been no there. I've had lights go out, not exactly on demand, but there was a particular mansion in London called Eastby Manor, and we were in a circle, and I was kind of like the lead medium, so to speak, and it was being recorded, which was quite interesting. It was in the long gallery, and they had a load of green lights on. All of the other lights were off, and these green lights were on in kind of beams. And I asked out loud, if there's anyone there, can you give us a sign? And then instantly, a bank of green lights went off immediately. And there was no one else around. I would have seen them. We all have seen them, and it wasn't the fuse because I managed to flip them back on again. So it was actually nothing wrong with the lights, but somehow, for some reason, they went out.
All right, then this is nothing you can prove, but what is it you have seen in the way of ghosts? How do you perceive them?
Well, okay, so this is kind of like an interesting one in terms of the positive, negative side of it. In the upstairs part of that very mansion, I sat down my little group and I called out because the people running it wanted an almost like Most Haunted type experience for the people, but I specifically wanted to contact the positive because I thought there was no merit in actually contacting anything negative. It's not really my ball game. So I said, if there's any beings or any spirits of a positive nature, can you let yourselves be known and kind of like talk to us? And funnily enough, one of the people in the circle started almost channeling this particular lady, and the lady was of a positive nature. It wasn't a negative. It wasn't a sort of get out kind of thing. It was just kind of like a lady that was talking about her life and things that she did, and you know, some of the children that she had. And I can't remember if any of the details were kind of written down to be verified. But it was really interesting. So in that respect, I believe we had some kind of communication with a more positive spirit. But then that was because I specifically asked for a positive spirit to step forwards, which is interesting. Yeah. I really do think you get what you seek. The attitude that you have and the mindset that you have draws towards you the spirit that comes forwards.
I agree with you. Intent has a lot to do with it. Okay, then how about what you've seen, though? How do you perceive ghosts?
Okay, so myself as a medium, it's mostly, if I'm doing a reading or a demo night, I'll mostly see a spirit within my mind's eye. So I will see like a face or how they're dressed or whatever in my mind's eye. However, I have seen external ones. So I used to think, we're kind of like with ghost shows and things, when people talk about orbs, I used to think, oh, maybe it's just insects or kind of, you know, dust or whatever. Because I have got, even though I do mediumship, I have got like a little, you know, almost scientist on my shoulder trying to rationalize things away as well.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Which I think psychics and mediums should have to kind of like maintain a bit of balance. However, I then started seeing orbs with my naked eye, and quite distinct ones. They're almost like welders. You know, when people do welding, arc welding, you get sparks flying off. So it was kind of like individual streaks of sparks, and they'd even move almost like sparks off welding. So they would kind of like zip in and out. And then the story that I often give out, very often I kind of go running late at night. So this one particular night was about 11 o'clock, because I tend to go running quite late, and it was a frosty, cold night. I was running down the hill locally to me, and I saw this figure dart across the road, which is bizarre because there was no other traffic on the roads, first of all, and either side of this road was kind of dark fields, just pitch black fields. And the road was illuminated by lighting, but beyond that, it was just dark fields. So, what was somebody doing at 11 o'clock at night on a road, darting towards a black field where there's no light? Why would they need to run across the road? Because there's no other traffic. They could easily walk. And in actual fact, as I carried on running, on the left-hand side, there was some flowers laid down as if somebody had passed away or an accident had happened.
Oh, my.
So I suspect what I saw was a spirit of whoever was knocked down or whatever running across there. But of course, it could possibly have been an actual real human. If it was a real human, then there's some very strange questions about what they're doing there, why are they there, and all that kind of thing. So
was the spirit running toward the flowers or away from them?
Towards the flowers, yeah. So I was running down, I was on the right-hand side of the road. They'd started from the right-hand side of the road and darted across to the left. It looked like it was maybe a female, and it looked like they were carrying some kind of rucksack, backpack or something. And they just ran towards the flowers, and I carried on running, and as I looked to the left to try and see them, they weren't standing there. I mean, where they were running to was a bus stop, but they weren't waiting for a bus because they weren't there. And B, I couldn't see them in the field, so they just disappeared. So if it was a physical human, they would have carried on in the field and just carried on walking into nothing.
Yeah.
Like this.
And there was no marker there? There was no, marker for a memorial?
No, it seemed to be a recent either accident or whatever it was. If somebody was hit, I don't know. I tried to look in the papers to see if there was anything. I couldn't find anything, but there was very specific flowers that were left there. And you just don't leave flowers at a bus stop unless there's something like that.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like somebody's had an accident there. Getting back to you, Lynne.
Well, I want to know, Irene, how do you perceive ghosts?
Oh.
Because you say you live in a haunted house, so have you seen anything yourself?
Yeah. I see. Sometimes I see them in solid form. Sometimes I see them like they're there in front of me, but they're not quite so solid. Then. It's hard to explain. I can see them right there in front of me, but there's something about them. There's just definitely something about them. But that's for another show. That is definitely for another show. What I wanted to talk to you about, Lynne, is haunted objects.
Oh, sure.
You've written about haunted objects in your book. And what's the objects that's haunted where you're concerned?
Well, we've got, I don't know how you do recycling there in the UK, but many of the dumps around here, they will establish a little area like a little barn or something where you can bring your usable items so that someone else can use them if you don't want them anymore.
Oh, yeah.
So the idea, it isn't trash, it's just used items that are still useful.
Mm-hmm.
So one day I was there at our dump, and I found this beautiful portrait of the Madonna and Child, and it was in a small little frame, and it needed painting, but it was like a painting on fabric, and it looked like a Botticelli painting. It was very similar to that. And I thought, who would want to throw this away? It's so beautiful. So I took it home, and I eventually painted the frame, and I hung it in my bedroom. And the problem is I can't really tell when things started happening, but a lot of things happened while I had that object. But they moved from one domicile to the other with me, the object did, and the activity seemed to increase. So it kind of came to a culmination at some point when I was out in Arizona. And the culmination was I had a disagreement with a manager at work. He was, I didn't like his management style at all. I didn't think he was appropriate, and I let him know.
Yeah.
So we had some words. I came home, and when I came through the house was fine until I got to the bedroom. When I got to the bedroom, one of the decorative pieces I had hanging on the wall had been lifted up off the hook and dashed against the floor right in the direction of this Madonna and Child picture. And I came home and I'm flabbergasted because it flew about 15 feet on its own. So I'm looking at the wall where it was, and I'm looking at where it landed, and there was just no logical reason for the trajectory that it took. And it wound up right underneath that darn Madonna and Child. And when I first got it, I just thought it was beautiful. But as I kept it over the years, it seemed to lose its sense of beauty for some reason. I didn't appreciate it as much. So I got a couple of psychic friends to come over and try to get an idea of what the heck was going on in the condo. And both of them said, it's that picture. It's that portrait of the Madonna and Child. And I said, how can it be? It's a religious icon. You know, it's got a religious connotation.
Yeah.
But I realize now that, you know, intent means a great deal. I mean, you can take a cross and you can turn it upside down and it's no longer holy. You know, intent has a lot to do with it. So I don't know if that picture, that portrait, came from a dysfunctional household or something where someone was hurt or murdered, but there was something negative attached to it. So I wound up getting rid of it and things actually calmed down.
Yeah? Wow. So
a Madonna and Child.
A Madonna and Child, yeah. You definitely would think, you know, that is one of the most safest objects you could actually have.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But then you think maybe like a little dolly would be, you know, a wonderful thing. But then look at Annabelle.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah, I know, but half of these dolls, let's face it, you know, a lot of these dolls that are being sold as haunted dolls on Amazon and places like that, eBay, they're just ordinary bloody little dolls.
You know, Irene, I'm sure a lot of them are, but we interviewed someone who did buy a haunted doll, and it was haunted.
Mm.
And it wasn't, it was very negative. In fact, he wound up burying it in a box with mirrors so that the negativity would reflect back on itself. Apparently, people became sick and died who came in contact with it.
Yeah. Mm.
And it was
I bought a doll in antique fair.
Ooh.
Oh gosh, how long ago? Quite a number of years ago now. And to look at her, she'd scare the shite out of you.
Really?
Yeah, she'd absolutely scare the shite out of you. And I've got nowhere to put it in the house because everybody said, God, that gives me the creeps. That doll gives me the creeps. But it's really a nice doll, and I've just chucked her up in the loft. So, which is a shame. But, you know, people are scared of dolls. I don't know why they're scared of dolls. It's the same thing with clowns, isn't it?
Clowns, yeah.
Yeah. It's got that same feeling about them all. Dolls, clowns, anything that looks at you sort of thing.
But Irene, did you have any kind of strange activity while you had the doll out?
No.
Oh.
Nothing at all.
So it was just an antique doll that no one liked.
Yeah, it's just an antique doll.
Oh.
You know, if I would definitely know straight away if it was something going on with it. I really would. I've got a ring. You've heard of the ring, have you?
No, I don't think so.
Well, if you go on to Facebook and look up Demon Ring of Amalfitana, that's my ring.
Oh. What happens with that?
Quite a few things, actually.
Oh, do tell. You piqued my curiosity now.
Oh, it's just a ring that came into my possession back in 1970 something, 1971, I think it is. I've had it that long. And Mark and I have been doing a lot of research on it, trying to find out how old it is, whereabouts it comes from, exactly what it is. You know, we were hoping it was the god Pan. But I sent it.
That's really old.
Yeah, I sent it to the British Museum, and they said there was no way it was Pan. They believed it was some sort of demon. They would not recognise it as Pan. And yet it came from Italy on the Amalfitana coast, not far from Pompeii. And what made me think it was Pan was because they'd unearthed a Roman statue of Pan at Pompeii. So they were, in the days of Pompeii, they were obviously, it was one of the gods that they were worshipping there. And this being found just along the road from Pompeii, or coming from just along the road from Pompeii, you know, I really did hope it was Pan, but no. I don't know much now. If the British Museum said, oh, yeah, I keep it locked up. For about 30 odd years, it's sat up in the loft in a box in the attic. But now I keep it in the safe in the office here. And every now and then I bring it out. And when I put it on, my whole demeanor changes. You know, I become naughty. I become bitchy. I can be angry at the least little thing. It really does change my personality.
Oh, my.
And, you know, you put it on and it's too big for me. Lynn is too big for me, but within seconds, it's tightened up on my finger.
Seriously?
It's so tight that if I shook my hands, it wouldn't come off. You know, or have a job to pull it off. And I had a friend come to stay with me once, and I made her put it on.
Yeah.
Okay. I made her put it on, and she said that she could feel it pulsating on her finger, vibrating.
Oh, my gosh. Well, what do you think the antiquity of this is? How old do you think it is?
How old do I think it is? Well, Mark seems to think it's got to be 600-700 years old.
Oh, my. What's it made out of?
Is it gold? It's solid silver with ruby eyes. And it's all molded in one piece.
Oh.
It's handmade. I took it into a old jeweler, Hungarian jeweler back in the 70s. And he absolutely flipped, told me to get out the shop with it.
What?
He went berserk at me, told me to get out the shop, take it with me, get out of his shop. But after a while, you know, I pleaded with him, tell me something about it. And he turned around and said, it's handmade, it's one solid object, handmade, it's made of silver, and it's got ruby eyes, he said, and it's evil. Get out my shop.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's amazing. Did you wind up taking it anywhere else where someone reacted the same way? Like, I mean, it could have just been this fellow. His reaction.
No, from that time on, really, it's not a comfortable ring because it's so heavy.
Yeah,
it's not really comfortable to wear. So, and it is so ugly. So,
is it like a man's ring?
Well, yeah, it's a bit. It's one of these. How can I explain it? It's too big for my finger, but then it fits my finger.
Yeah.
It's not my hands swelling up because it doesn't matter whether it's in summer or it's in winter. I could even put it in my hand in freezing water and that ring will still tighten up on my finger.
Wow.
So it is a man. I would have thought it was a man's ring. Yeah. Because apparently the story of it goes right the way back to an old hermit that lived in a village that used to wear it all the time. He was never seen without it. And of course, when he died and people moved into the hermit's house, this ring was found hanging on an old iron nail in the kitchen. And then, of course, it came over to me to England, and that's it. And I've had it ever since. But it's, I love my little ring.
So you
He's evil. He's bad. He's evil and he's bad. But I have an affection for him because I have had him for so many years now, absolutely half a century nearly. And, the old Hungarian jeweler turned around and told me when he kicked me out of the shop, he said, "Get out of my shop. You're the keeper of that ring. Now get out of the shop. Wow. You are the keeper. Keep it safe or keep it whatever." I don't know. I can't quite remember now, but he told me to get out of the shop anyway. The ring was, when it first came to this country, it was brought over by a friend of mine who was very religious, an Italian friend of mine that was very religious, and he got so much bad luck with it that he took it to a churchyard and he buried it in the churchyard. And then a year or so later, about a year and a half later, he told me about it, and he told me that it was buried in this churchyard, and me being me wanted it dug up. So we went along there with a spade and God knows what else to dig up the ground in the churchyard. And when we got there, it was the whole, I think it was late spring, early summer when we got there. So this ring had been in there all through the seasons, There'd been snow on the ground, there'd been rain, there'd been everything. And we got there and the churchyard had been mown. So all the graves were all mown nicely and everything, but over about 6 foot away from the wall of the church, 6 or 8 foot away from the wall of the church, although the grass had been all mown nice and short, there was one big long tuft of grass sticking up. And he walked over to it. He said, "This is where it is." And I tell you, Lynn, if I hadn't tried to pull that grass up myself, I would have believed that that ring had just been put in the ground. But that grass was well rooted into the ground. I had an awful job trying to pull it up. And we dug out the ring, and the ring came out the ground as shiny as if someone had just dropped it in there. No mess on it, no dirt, there was no discoloration. It was.
And it wasn't buried in any kind of a container, right?
No, it was just dropped in the ground. He dug
How did he mark the ground?
He just knew where it was. He just knew. He walked so many steps from the church wall to where it was.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's where this tuft of grass was growing. But the funny thing about it is, whoever mowed that lawn or that ground in that churchyard, whatever they were using, must have jumped this tuft of grass.
Jeez.
But it was coarse grass, it wasn't like lawn grass. This was coarse grass with deep roots.
Oh, the whole thing sounds very bizarre, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does sound bizarre, yeah. But if you
you
take a look at the ring, see it.
Is there a picture on the internet of it?
Yeah, it's on Facebook.
Oh, I'll have to check that out. You did mention taking it to a museum to have it looked at?
It went to London, British Museum in London. Mm.
And what did they have to say?
They said that there was no way it was Pan. It was very, very old. They couldn't exactly date the age of it. It was very difficult to date anything like that. No, they couldn't exactly date it. But they said that it was well into the hundreds.
Wow. I would think it would be a keepsake.
They agreed it was handmade. Very, very old. And they said that, because I said to them, a friend of mine thought it was a demon. And they said, well, but I think it's Pan. They said, no way is it Pan. I think your friend's more right, that it is a demon rather than...
Well, Pan is almost about diabolical looking. He looks very nature-like. And
yeah, well, so does the ring. It's got ringed horns. He has got ringed horns on either side of his head. But also his face is... Oh, it's all right. Something's telling me it's time to go to bed. Also, if you cover up half his face, he's snarling at you. If you cover the other half of his face, he's grinning at you.
Opposites, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I would advise you to get rid of it, but you seem attached to it, Irene.
No, I'm not. But everybody says get rid of it. People have suggested me throwing it in the sea, throwing it in the river, putting it in the middle of the road and letting a steamroller go over it. No. No, because, it's like I said, I'll throw it in the sea, okay, and then I'll go to the fish and chip shop, buy some fish and chips one day, and there'd be the ring sitting inside the fish.
If you threw it away, you'd probably find it someplace in your house, sitting on a bureau or something, waiting for you. I don't think you could get rid of it. I mean, stuff like that happens. Have either of you experienced past lives?
Past lives?
I've not really delved into that. What about you, Irene?
What's that again, Andy?
Mark's meant to be my sister in a past life. If that helps. Yeah. What about you?
Yeah.
What about you, Lynne?
Well, did you say that Andy Mercer was the one who's familiar with Glastonbury?
Yes.
Okay, I didn't know if it was Andy Chaplin or Mercer.
No.
Well, I think that I might have been a monk, and I think I might have been a monk at Glastonbury. And I'm working on planning a trip to England for this summer. We'll see if that happens. But Glastonbury is on the itinerary. And this past life revelation came through a friend of mine, only I appeared in his dream. only I wasn't who I thought I was. What happened was he dreamt that he was like in a cellar excavating, and he heard someone call him by the name of Blight or Bly, and he said that there were monks in the dream, and there was one in particular who was me. I was holding a candle and I was lighting the way. But the problem was I was a ghost in the dream. Are you still there?
Yeah, who's typing? Andy, you typing?
I'm coming into the conversation because that just piqued my hearing quite.
Hold on a minute, one moment. Everybody, this is Andy Mercer, producer and station manager at Paranormal UK Radio. Go, Andy.
Doing all the technical stuff in the background this evening, but I was just listening, of course. And what do you know about Glastonbury, Lynn?
Well, research has shown that Frederick Bly Bond received some information from discarnate monks.
What he is, that's it, exactly. He's believed to have found the layout of the original abbey and additional parts, and initially he was how he got the information, and when it came out how he was receiving the information, they fired him. But yes, that's why I researched from Bly, because it is exactly.
See, so I had always thought I was a monk, but I had nothing specific to go on, and he has this dream. So he went to McGill University, and he did some research, and this was in the 70s when there was no internet. So he felt from the dream that it was Glastonbury Cathedral, that his name sounded something like Bly or Blight, and that I was in the dream as a monk. So come to find out, I got that information from him, and then I bought The Gate of Remembrance, which was written by Frederick Bly Bond.
Absolutely.
Oh, what a fascinating story that is. In it are all of the the recorded sessions from automatic writing of him and his friend Bartlett, and also the conversations with the different monks. Some of them were a group called the Watchers, and another one who came through quite prevalently was Johannes Bryant, and he was a stonemason, and he became the curator of Edgar Chapel. But anyway, it's Bryant that I believe I might have been. He was the one who is giving Frederick Bly Bond directions, location, and measurements for the Edgar Chapel.
Well, if you do get there this year, definitely go to the George and Pilgrim pub, because it's as old as the Abbey, the front part is, and there's very nice murals on the wall that was painted by someone I kind of vaguely know of, information all about it. It's really impressive to see his artwork. Gives you a really good idea of the story.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd love to see that, and I want to walk the grounds of the Abbey too.
Yeah, absolutely. It's open to the public. It's not much to get in, and you can have a good nose around. So I will now retreat back into the distance and carry you guys.
All right. Thank you, Andy. Thank you. But it was really cool to get that verification when I had basically nothing to go on.
Yeah. Oh. And now you've met Andy.
Yes, thank you. I was hoping to talk to him.
I tell you what, he goes to Glastonbury nearly every year.
I must admit, I'm actually there about 4 or 5 times a year. Every few months I escape into He's got 2 of the second-hand bookshops in the country there for esoteric stuff, so I tend to descend upon those bookshops and come out with a suitcase full of books every time, and sell quite a few to them as well.
So, Andy, have they kind of turned this place into a tourist area with costume people walking around?
When I was there, probably back in October, there was a guy that was dressed like Father Christmas. Well, not dressed like Father. He looked like Father Christmas with his big white beard, kind of like a Gandalf type person, just walking around. And there was another guy that was dressed head to toe as if he was an 18th century dandyman. He had the big coat with the big sleeves and all the kind of Gothic finery, with his kind of wife or partner in tow, dressed similarly. And nobody batted an eyelid. It was just completely completely normal there. So you get some very kind of eclectic, strange characters walking around.
Sounds like it's Halloween every day there.
Yeah, definitely, and they weren't even they weren't paid to be costume people. They were literally just normal everyday people who like to go to Glastonbury and dress as goths, and why not?
So this wasn't just at the Abbey. This was walking through the streets of Glastonbury.
Oh yeah, just casually browsing the shops there.
Well, they do that in Salem, New Hampshire, but it's usually, Salem, Mass. There is a Salem, New Hampshire, on the month of Halloween. So the whole month of October, you've got costume people walking through Salem, Massachusetts, because it's the witch capital of the world, supposedly.
I tell you what, the best place to meditate as well, if you're into meditation, I think they call it the Goddess Temple. So you go up some stairs and it's quite dark, and there's like a little pyramid type thing, and there's candles and a Buddha and everything. It was really, really peaceful meditation I had when I was there.
Okay, now we're going to have to meditate now then, darling. All right, so we've come to the end of the show. So Lynne, if you'd like to tell us, where can people buy your book, Once More People, Gateway to the Paranormal?
Yes, that would be on Amazon. It's available in both Kindle and the paperback form. And I'm developing a website right now, and Willie and I have a radio show, Spirit Radio, The Paranormal Experience. And let me see, you can catch it live streaming on WSCAFM.org. And of course, we are on PAUK Radio Network. Broadcast
PAUK Radio Network, Paranormal UK Radio Network.
And we're broadcast on Tuesdays.
That's great.
9 p.m. GMT and Eastern Standard.
And I try to get to listen to you as much as I can. You know that, don't you?
Yes, I do the same.
Yeah. Oh, that's great.
But we have busy lives, don't we? There's so many shows I hate to miss. I just don't have time to listen to.
Yeah, we do produce quite a few shows on here as well, And we've got a new show coming out very, very soon. And I've got to give a shout out for it, and that is the Paradivas.
Oh yes, all women.
Yeah, Marie Samuels and Marianne Donnelly. Paradivas, everybody. So look out for that. That'll be starting here early March. Okay.
And don't forget to listen out for Paranormal Peep Show, which is myself and Neil Geddes Ward, also on PAUK.
Right, and we've got to go now, I'm afraid. So thank you for listening in, and you can catch the Paranormal UK Radio Network just about everywhere.
Thank you so much for having me on.
You're welcome. Bye.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, bye-bye.